First things first, I'm Jenna Wolfe. That's the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. And on the second day of spring, we are just moments away from a Jagunda nor'easter here in New York City.
Giant snowstorm coming.
Come on.
But CC, a giant snowstorm's coming. CC did some Hall of Fame hands pre-show. I don't quite know why, but there was if people knew what it took to get this football to sit perfectly the way it is right now without moving, it was done at the last possible second.
Rule changes, so we changed the desk a little bit.
Oh, okay.
Got a little Barkley, maybe New York blue, maybe coming to New York, little headlines from the days, and then the football.
I like
to
it.
get it started.
I like it. Absolutely right.
Crazy things happening here.
Yes.
Crazy things. We bounced a football and put a newspaper on the desk. What are we going to do tomorrow?
Jenna's got curls in her hair.
Stand by. But I
Yes.
don't have a pen is what I don't have. There you go.
Yeah, you do.
What a team. All right, let's start the show. Two of the hottest teams in the history of the universe, also the NBA this season. They both faced off last night. It's the Blazers, winners of 13 in a row, and the Rockets, winners of 22 of their last 23. One of the lesser-known rules in the NBA, guys, game can't end in a tie. This one went to the Rockets, thanks in large part to James Harden and his 42 points. Rockets now own a 4-game lead in the Western Conference. Cris Carter, I'll start with you with all that balancing. How will you answer this? Is it time to consider the Houston Rockets the favorites to win the NBA title?
Well, I think many have looked at this, and we started the conversation before Golden State got injured. You know, will Golden State, how important is the #1 seed? And then we start seeing Steph got hurt. And then we're like, you know, how important is it to have Steph back? So now it's kind of evolved to, oh, well, Golden State, are they as good as Houston with guys being injured? Oh, well, now let's get down to it. Well, who is the favorite? The team that's played the best, typically, they would be the favorite. That's not the case. In the Eastern Conference, we've seen Toronto. They've dominated the East. They've improved their team, their overall bench, but people aren't going to give them credit for it. Now, in the West, because Houston, they've changed their roster, and they've changed the style for which they play. Does this style match up more with Golden State? I would say yes. Are we going to give them credit for how they've played for 6 months? Like, at some point, we have to give them credit. Yes, this is the best team in the NBA, but are they the favorite? They're not the favorite because the champ, you still got to knock the champ out. The champ has all the experience. The champ, we should rightfully, because they're NBA champs. Houston is the best team. Are they the favorite? I don't think they should be the favorite until we see Golden State either not healthy, Golden State gets down in a series. I can understand, but I'm giving Houston credit for how good they've been. But being a champion, being a multiple champion that Golden State is, given that all their players are going to be back, I would say just to play on the word, yes, I'm much respect to Houston. But Golden State is still the champ, and until Houston knocks them out, that's what I'm going to say. Golden State should still be the favorite, as long as they go into the playoffs healthy.
What's the difference then, Nick, between the best team in the NBA and the favorite team in the NBA?
Well, I understand CC's distinction, which is right now the Rockets have played the best. Right now the Rockets are the healthiest, so right now they're the best team. But that doesn't mean if right now, if all things were equal, if they played each other, CC would pick the Rockets to beat the Warriors. So that's his distinction, that the Warriors are still, in his eyes, the favorite
because
over
of
Houston.
the championship pedigree.
Because of the championship pedigree.
All the things that they've been through, we need to consider that compared to, are we just going to look at what's happened in this basketball season?
Full Warriors strength, full Houston strength, not where they are right now. Okay.
Yes.
And so I understand that distinction, and I think that is a fair distinction to draw. I do not think the best team has to be always the favorite. I think a great example is the East. Toronto clearly has been the best team in the East this year. I will never believe they're the favorite to win the East till they got 3 wins in a series and they're up with a few seconds left on the Cavs. So I understand that distinction. I no longer think that distinction applies to the Western Conference. I think Houston is the best team, and I think as we sit here on the second day of spring, March 21st, I believe the Houston Rockets are the favorite to win the NBA championship. I think we have a sample size of nearly a full season. We have a sample size of exactly a half season of Harden, Paul, Capella playing. 41 games they've played together. They're 39-2. We have seen Houston play the next 8 teams in the West. So 7 of those teams will make the playoffs. But teams 2 through 9 in the West this year, they are 21-3. And if we are going to go to historically, The Rockets almost assuredly this year will win at least 65 games. They need to go 8-3 or better down the stretch to get to 65 wins. Why do I point out 65 wins? 65 wins have happened 20 times in NBA history. 15 of those times, that team has won the championship. So we are getting to historical markers with this basketball team. We already talked about how their offense, right now it dropped a tick, so it's no longer the greatest offense in NBA history. It's like the second greatest offense in NBA history. But the three in the other top four all won a championship. We are talking about historical regular season greatness from a team that, even if I remove the historical lens, I just look at it as a basketball fan in 2018. The one thing I cannot find with the Rockets is what they're missing, aside from something they can't grab right now, which is experience, championship pedigree. The one thing they're missing, they're ineligible to get during the regular season.
Said.
So let's just look at this guy up here, because there have been moments where we've considered James Harden a phenomenal player, but slightly maybe underrated because he hasn't fully been able to prove himself in the postseason. Based on everything you've watched in the regular season, what he's been able to do, how he's been able to work with Chris Paul when people were wondering how these two would work together this season, do you still think is a bit underrated?
No, he can't be underrated. I mean, if you watch the games and you see what Harden is doing, he's the best offensive player in the NBA. And I believe that the players that they have around him, and I talk about this quite often, styles, team styles, and James Harden. James Harden, he's got more versatility to his game and his teammates that he's playing with. You have to give them so much respect. And the way D'Antoni has the offense and the way they close out games, the way they do the pick and roll just to get the mismatch compared to trying to pick and actually roll old school basketball. Like, they pick and roll to get a matchup, to make guys switch, Jenna, to get Harden on anyone he wants on the court. And they have the shooters to build a space to court. He breaks down that defender better than anyone right now in the NBA. So Harden, man, you have to give Harden respect.
The only reason James Harden won't be, and pardon me, the only reason James Harden won't be the unanimous MVP this year, which has only been done once, Steph did it, LeBron was a vote away from doing it a few years ago, is because some people don't like his style. Some people don't like the herky-jerky, slow motion.
His ability to draw fouls on people. It's a style, too, that's unorthodox, and most of the great players, they don't have that.
Isn't that a skill, or is that a style?
No. It's an enormous skill. I'm just saying.
Develop.
You got 120 people that are going to vote for this award. There are 4 or 5 of them, I believe, that don't like watching Harden play. So they're like, I'm going to vote for Anthony Davis.
Aesthetically.
Aesthetically. Just simply don't like. But Harden is clearly going to win the MVP this year. And now we've got a 4-year sample of Harden's play, where I do think it's fair to ask, is he underrated nationally? Most people believe the hierarchy goes like this: LeBron 1, KD 2, Steph 3, and then a scrum for that next spot. Harden, Anthony Davis, Kawhi when he's healthy. Some people love Russ. The shine's come off him a little bit this year. But the last 4 years, Harden's gone second, ninth, second, and now first in MVP voting. I'm assigning that to him. I think show Harden. Let me do one of those blind reveals. That's Harden versus someone over the last 4 years. That's not this year. 4 years cumulative. Harden's beating him in points, trailing slightly in rebounds, beating him soundly in assists, nearly identical PERs. That's over a 4-year sample. Show me who that guy is. The guy everyone says is the second best player in the world.
That's interesting.
James Harden has as good of an argument as Steph, as good of an argument as Durant, that he is the second best player in the world.
So why do we talk about Durant in a totally different class than we do James Harden?
I think we've liked Durant. Durant has less holes in his game than Harden had up to this point. The way I think also the pieces for which he's playing with, I think that we had Durant and Harden very, very close to each other until we saw Durant last season in the postseason against LeBron and with the Warriors and being the MVP. I think that was kind of one of the stamps of approval the public gave to Kevin Durant. Harden hadn't had that moment. Nick, to your point, as far as his unorthodox style and people not liking that style, there's also people that don't like Durant's style. They don't like LeBron's style because he complains. Harden complains. But Man, for me to stay up, for the hours that we're working, for me to stay up and watch them play last night, I'm going to tell you, you got to be a special ball player. And that's where Harden is right now. It's a developed style that also has been cultivated by the offensive system that they have in Houston and the players that they have put around him. It is time for James Harden to shine. He has never played better with his teammates, and that style has never been developed where he can take advantage of NBA defenses, more so than any point I've seen in James's career.
And the other reason that he has been considered a tier beneath Durant, other than the defense, which, by the way, that obviously wasn't shown on that graphic, Durant is a better defensive player, and we have to be fair on that, is because prior to this year, Harden had never been the best player on a team that you credibly thought could win the championship. Durant had been the best player on a number of teams that you credibly thought, whether it was in Oklahoma City or Golden State, you credibly thought could win the championship. But I want to quote Daryl Morey on one thing. He said this on a panel I moderated at the Sloan Analytics Conference. And when he said it, the crowd kind of drew back. But I've been thinking about it. He said, in James Harden, we have the best isolation player in NBA history. Now, when you start saying best in NBA history, you start thinking, okay, let's think about how Kobe was in isolation. Jordan didn't do a ton of isolation because of the offense they're running. Like you're thinking about it. But then you watch the Rockets at the end of games. How do they close out games? ISO James Harden.
Yes.
And how's it worked out for them, at least thus far this year? I mean, it's worked out to where they're pacing to win 66 games.
The only guy I would compare him to, and it's hard to compare him because one's a post player, my man Isaiah Thomas says, Kareem.
Oh, okay.
If you say that ISO is throwing it into the post, which is a little bit different.
A little different.
He's the only guy you can, I think, actually compare him to.
And you have to think that the narrative changes a little bit if James Harden does go ahead and win the title. Then we start talking.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Then you start talking about him historically among shooting guards. Him versus Dwayne Wade. Him versus Kobe. It changes.
What is the headline on the paper, Cece?
Lose clues.
Yes, Barkley.
Lose clues. We're talking about Saquon Barkley coming up next. All right, new topic to the NFL draft. Penn State held their pro day yesterday, but running back Saquon Barkley did not take part in the Penn State pro day yesterday. No NFL running back coaches showed up, so Saquon decided not to participate. Many are wondering if he's the best player in the draft. Don't worry, he isn't wondering that. He knows. Here he is, talking with Kim Jones.
Do you think you're the best player in this draft?
Yes, ma'am.
No doubt.
Yes, ma'am.
You're going ma'am on me, so I know you're serious. But top pick, top 2 picks, top 5 picks, I mean, do you set a goal?
No. The mindset I have that it don't matter where you draft me. I can tell you you're going to get a guy that's going to come in, it's going to work. That's how I got here, and that's the only thing I know. I can't promise you Rookie of the Year. I can't promise you 2,000 yards, but I can promise you that I'm going to come in and you're going to get a leader. You're going to get guys who's a competitor who's passionate about the game, and the rest are going to take care of itself.
What a well-spoken young man he is at this
Mature
point.
beyond his years, it appears.
He really is, and he's not even out of college. All right, Cece, how confident are you that Saquon Barkley is, call it a can't-miss NFL star?
Well, ma'am, there's not a lot of can't miss.
Don't even think about it.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
There's not a lot of.
I may be only a few years younger than you, but I am still younger.
I got you. That's the way my mom raised me. But good question, ma'am.
It's not
can't
landing
miss.
well.
It's really hard to put on a prospect coming into the league. But as far as a guy who I believe has the perfect transition skills, and let alone, forget his maturity. Like, I'm not even going to get to that part. Just his pure football skills as a runner, running between the tackles, as an elusive runner, being able to score from anywhere on the field, as a pass receiver, coming from college football and being able to catch the football, a special teams player, an elite special teams player, dangerous. If you kick the ball to him on a kickoff, as we watch Ohio State, the first play of the game, man, he takes it back to the house. So he's proven himself in a league that running backs, being the Big Ten, they transfer over to the NFL as good as any conference that we've seen. We see what they have in Dallas, in Zeke, what they have in Pittsburgh. These are 2 of the 4 best running backs in the league, all-purpose-wise. They came from the Big Ten. So you can look at his stats, what he did in the Big Ten, how he played, and I see that transfers over. His overall attitude and loving football. He doesn't care where he's drafted. Yes, he should think he's the best player in the draft because he's proven that, being consistent at the college level. And from talking to the coaching staff, there. They say he's even a better person. He's a great leader in the locker room. He holds all the records from weightlifting, sprinting, all those things that people deem to be important. He's got them, and he's got them in spades. So I'm looking forward to his transition to the National Football League because I believe, forget a can't-miss prospect, I believe he is a bright star in a league that needs more stars like him.
Before I answer the question, I want to ask you one question because you every time we've talked about Saquon, you've talked about a part of his game that you focus on more than anyone that I hear talk about this player, and some people just ignore it entirely, which is the special teams component, which is how he can impact the game, not when your offense is on the field, but in the special teams component. He's going to be a top 5 pick somewhere. You would be comfortable, and tell me why you'd be comfortable using him in the special teams game, because we typically don't see guys that teams consider their A-plus assets in the special teams game. You'd be comfortable with Saquon there. How come?
Because he's special. He's special when he gets the ball in space. And if you're going to give me 3 or 4 more opportunities, given the rules in the NFL, the way they have moved the kicking game back, seeing that he's proven, he makes people miss. He doesn't get hit hard a lot. Leonard Fournette, you saw him in college football. He got hit hard a lot in his rookie year. He struggled with some nagging injuries. But when you don't have a guy who's going to get hit an awful lot, he's not going to get solid contact. They're not going to, because he's elusive like that. You utilize him because on the first day, there's no play you have to call. It's kick the ball off. He catches it. They run some type of scheme to be able to get him. And I believe it's an instant impact to the NFL right now.
So as far as I don't know that it's ever fair to call a player can't miss in this regard. I remember the Oakland Raiders, and this is going to be a name no one has thought of in 15 years. But the Raiders, they were going to finally be smart in the draft. They weren't going to take the fastest guy. They weren't going to take the flashiest guy. They were going to take the safest, can't-miss prospect. His name was Robert Gallery, a number 2 overall pick at left tackle. Now, he ended up having a long career, and he's transitioned to right tackle. It was fine. But we thought he was the safest can't-miss guy, and he, of course, never became the franchise guy. So there's never 100%, but is he the closest thing that we have in this draft as to a guy that I am confident will be a Pro Bowl player in this league? Absolutely. Of course, always barring injury. He is a guy, because of the position that he plays, that I think his transition will be the easiest, and I think he can make the most instant impact. And one last point, compared to some of these other star running backs we've seen coming out, I think he is least reliant on a great offensive line because of how he can help you. You said in the special teams game, but also catching the football.
Yes.
We saw the difference between Leonard Fournette, good, bad offensive line, where Todd Gurley's a better example, good, bad offensive line. I don't think he will be as much of a victim to his circumstances as some of those other players.
He's also the safe bet from a process of elimination. You could poke holes in all the top 3 or 4, 5 quarterbacks that you have going right now, that no one is like the sure bet fired thing. No one has poked a ton of holes in Saquon Barkley's game up to this point. All right, coming up, changes are coming to the catch rule. CC knows nothing about that, so we will not ask him one thing about it.
This hurt me. This hurt me.
Oh, I'm so happy.
The bar is up to here.
Man, this hurt.
All right, to the NFL now, and Ndamukong Suh is set to continue his free agent tour. He visited with the Rams yesterday. He'll visit with the Raiders today. Raiders is an interesting choice for him. CC, would Suh be a good fit in Oakland?
Ooh, man, I think that if you look at veteran players, for me, veteran players have always gone to the Raiders and kind of been able to live up to that skull and crossbones type of image. I think with John Gruden, you need a couple dirty guys. You need some guys going to cause a little chaos, and I believe John Gruden and Ndamukong Suh can be one of those guys. Now you got to put him on a tight leash because he will stomp a dude's face. He will stomp you on Thanksgiving. So, yes, when you are the Raiders, you do need some edge players. Edge meaning on the fringe of the rules, and Ndamukong Suh is definitely one of those players.
Man, when we heard he was getting cut by the Dolphins, I said I thought the Rams would be the best fit for him. He visited one yesterday. We'll see what he does. But I said that before the Rams traded for Marcus Peters, signed Aqib Talib. You got Marcus Peters, Aqib Talib, and Ndamukong Suh in a locker room. That might be a little too much for my man Wade Phillips to handle.
Yeah,
so maybe
I don't know who the team chaplain is there, but they're going to be busy.
And they're going to need someone to pray for them.
Right.
For the
no
team
doubt.
chaplain.
Yes.
So the Raiders, listen, you guys know I'm not bullish on some of the moves John Gruden has made. I happen to think Suh has a little more left than a lot of people do. I think Suh If it's less than $8 million a year, that's about the threshold I would put it at, could be a good value for the right team. So we'll see where he ends up.
All right, to the draft now. Former
I think
UCLA
that's less
quarterback
money he made at Nebraska.
Josh Rosen worked out for the Browns and the Giants on Tuesday. Browns have the top pick, Giants second pick in the draft. Total coincidence that he worked out for him. Nick, any chance Rosen is taken top 2 in the draft?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think Cleveland's going to take him. At this point, I would say Sam Darnold is a favorite versus the rest of the field to go number 1. The question is, would the Giants take him? Or would a team give the Giants an enormous package of picks to get up to number 2 so they can take him? I think that is absolutely in play, that Josh Rosen is the second pick of the draft. You know that if I were running the Giants, I would take him number 2. I, unfortunately, am not running the Giants, though, so I cannot guarantee that they will.
And not because I don't like them, but I follow the guys that follow the draft, and this is the quarterback that we've least talked about going to Cleveland. We talked about Josh Allen. We talked about Sam Darnold. And I don't think it helped him, his comments during the season, as far as playing in Cleveland. Now, it's disputed, did he say it and did he come back and correct it? But I believe that they're going to take the safest quarterback, and I believe that's Sam Darnold at the number 1.
And finally, the NFL says they're considering changing pass interference from a spot-on-foul penalty to a 15-yard penalty. CC, does the pass interference rule need adjusting?
The pass interference penalty right now, in the way the league has governed, the way the rules have changed, if you look at all the rule changes in the last 15 to 20 years, it's been to the benefit of the offense. Very seldom have they adjusted the defensive rules to be able to help. But, man, you're talking about something that drives fans crazy, pull their hair out, is just a little ticky-tack, a judgment pass interference call where, man, the team goes from being backed up to now they're at midfield, or they're at midfield and now they're in scoring territory. To also, when you get penalized inside the end zone, that goes right to the 1-yard line. There's nothing more penal in the game than the pass interference. I believe that it should be adjusted, a lot like college football, because we throw the ball more. The chances of pass have it happening are a lot more prevalent, and it changes the course of games. I don't think teams will just start having 15-yard penalties if they do change the rule. So it's one of them kind of things that, will we much rather have the big hit down the field, or do we think guys will start grabbing more because it's less penal? I don't think guys will do that, because 15 yards, that's a personal foul. When you see 15-yard penalties, typically the offensive team is going to score some points. So I would like to see an adjustment to be able to help out the defense.
I would like to see an adjustment, but not the exact adjustment they're talking about. Because you know, I love the spectacular play. And I am afraid that if you make it to where it's just a 15-yard penalty, that what you're going to have is guys, when they get beat for potentially a touchdown, just tackle the guy and take the penalty. Do you of course, remember when the face mask, there used to be 2 versions of it.
Yep.
A 5-yard minor face mask and a 15-yard personal foul face mask. I would like to see the NFL do that with pass interference. 15 and spot. Have it be a spot foul for truly egregious pass interference penalties, ones where it's clearly intentional, you've been beaten, you're trying to prevent the touchdown that the guy should have, and a 15-yarder for more of the judgment call ones. And there is a bit of a fringe benefit to that. I'd like to take everyone back to the final play of this NFL season, the Hail Mary. Remember what Malcolm Jenkins did on that Hail Mary? He knew they were not going to call pass interference. So he just wiped out, I think it was Gronk on the play, he just wipes him out.
No, he wiped out one of the other receivers. Gronk was able to get back into the play and almost make the play.
Right, but
he blindsided
whomever it was.
Hogan. Yes.
Knowing there was not going to be a call.
Knowing they're not going to call a spot foul, final play of the Super Bowl, pass interference. And we see that on Hail Marys a lot, that guys are like, they're not going to call spot foul in the end zone. If there was the ability to have it be a 15-yard foul, then maybe you wouldn't be able to do that. And maybe the guys would be a little more cautious in those individual situations. I know people don't love the referees having more judgment calls, but I think this might be a happy medium. Have the 15-yard variety and the spot foul variety. That's something I would like to see if the NFL would potentially consider. So that would be my solution.
Why don't you just call Roger? You have so many great ideas. I mean, we have to hear them all. Why doesn't he?
I got other rule tweaks you want to know. By the way, illegal contact shouldn't be an automatic first down. Just 5 yards, do it again. No 3rd and 13.
Every once in a while, I take some of the one or two of his little concepts and take them into the meeting.
He called them little concepts.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Nick has spent years developing these.
Years?
Little concepts. Another potential rule change after a season full of controversial catches and non-catches. The NFL is, in fact, making changes. NFL Vice President Troy Vincent says the committee plans to change parts of the rule when it comes to going to the ground, as well as to slight movement of the ball within the receiver's hands. CeCe, what's your reaction to these changes?
Well, I could say I initially was not very, very happy about it, but in search of, and I had to listen to Roger and a bunch of other people that Roger Goodell. I had to listen to him and other people on the committee, and they did have a tremendous influence on changing my overall view of them potentially changing the rule. And the reason why was because it wasn't like they just wanted to change the rule. They just really want to make the game better for fans. All right? They believe that the pros will adjust. When they change the illegal contact rule or targeting rule, the players have adjusted to that. And the new rule, if the fans want it, if it's going to be more entertaining, and the way they went about it. They looked at all the plays, and we've done this several times. So I've been fortunate enough to be on the committee that decides this. But when they looked at it, they went backwards compared to us looking at 50 plays and saying, is this a catch? Is this not a catch? It was more of, would you like this to be a catch?
And how can we adjust the rules to make this a catch?
Right. Should this be a catch in the game? Would the fans want this to be a catch? So very seldom do you ever see rule changes where they're trying to help the fan and help the product that the fan is seeing on the field. And the catch, no catch rule, it's not about the players. It's really about the fans and their judgment of it, and Roger being a fan of football. So trying to make it more simple, because as you can see, this ball is in my hand, but I still have control of it. So now once a guy catches the ball, because of their skill level, can this ball still move and them still have possession of it? And that is, yes, I can understand that. And we have to build and embrace technology. When you have all the different angles and all the replays, you know that's going to come into play. So if we have the judgment this ball moves anything, any little bit, that it's not going to be a catch, you're going to be taking away a lot of spectacular plays that guys are making, taking away value from the game that the fans. The other part of it is going to the ground.
That's the part I want you to explain to the audience.
I mean, that part's going to be eliminated. They're going to make it simpler, so that part you don't have to worry about. So
how do you make it simpler?
It doesn't have to qualify as a catch, them surviving the ground.
Okay.
If they've had the other two elements being control and time, being time and 2 feet or one body part, then it would be a catch. That part, as far as surviving the ground, would be eliminated from it.
Let me let the audience know, as it is written currently, pre-change, if you are going to the ground, the catch process essentially has to start totally anew once you hit the ground. Like,
yes.
That's what happened with Jesse James. It wasn't that he went to the ground. It was that once he goes to the ground, it doesn't matter that he had what I would have called possession pre-going to the ground. It was he got possession while going to the ground, so none of that's possession. He now hits the ground, doesn't have possession. It's a wrap for him. If in that play, once he hits the ground, the ball never comes loose and he rolls over, that would have been a catch.
Yes.
He survives the ground and then rolls over. The Des Bryant play, similarly, he's going to the ground. To your eye, it looks like he has possession, but by the way the rule is written, you can't.
By the letter of the rule.
You cannot legally, according to the rule the way it is written now, or the way it was written as of last night, we'll see how they change it, you cannot actually have possession until you have gone to the ground fully and then made your football move.
So would that Jesse James catch have been ruled a catch?
Yes, that would have been a catch.
Under the new, the way we're going to change it.
Exactly right.
Yes.
Because they're going to the ground, and same with the Des Bryant play.
Sure.
Because he clearly had control of the football,
Right.
but he didn't survive the ground.
Right. And the way the rule was written, neither one of those should have been catches. But when you look back to the game and the way they did it, and Troy Vincent leading up that group there with football operations at the NFL office, do we want these plays in the game? Do we want Des Bryant to catch that ball? We do. Do we want Jesse James to catch that ball? No, we do. So in changing the rule, those plays would be added to so fans overall. But listen, pump your brakes a little bit. We're going to go through a growing period.
Yes.
Because our eyes
That's
got
what I
to
was gonna
adjust
say. Right.
to the game. And, you know, unless there's indisputable evidence, you're not going to be able to go to replay either.
Well,
so
that is going to be the forgotten part of what Troy said yesterday. And that is the part that I personally like the most, which is they are going to try to re-emphasize to officials what your call on the field is the written gospel,
yes,
barring something
Call
obvious.
it with conviction.
Call it with conviction, and if upon replay it is glaringly obvious you got it wrong, then change it.
But what do you mean if it is obvious on replay? Do they have to go to replay?
No. So
How
the
are
way
they seeing
what
the
was
replay?
happening this year, I felt very often, was there was a play was called on the field a catch. And then by your 7th replay in super slow-mo from a third angle, you see, oh, there may have been a bobble.
Right. It gets challenged. It gets challenged by the coaches.
Challenged, or if it's on a scoring play.
Right, but the refs aren't doing that. The coaches are doing that.
No. What the refs were doing, in my eyes, was almost looking for reasons to overturn it.
Oh, okay.
And what Troy said yesterday is, we are going to go
back to the old standard,
which is the call on the field. You need, remember, incontrovertible video evidence. The most important word there is incontrovertible. No, if the call on the field was a catch or, by the way, an incompletion, if we are going to switch it, we need it to be clear to everyone. What we can't have is a call switched that people are then arguing about.
Right.
We can have a call stand that people say, it should have been overturned. What we can't have is that you maybe got it right on the field, use replay to get it wrong. Because that, as a fan, you're talking about the fans.
Yes.
There's nothing more frustrating as a fan watching a game than feeling like replay screwed me.
Right.
Like, the refs got it right, and now technology, now it's different if replay, okay, the refs clearly got it wrong. Replay helped them get it right, even if that goes against you.
Just quickly, this is now the second time we're having a rule change, right? A couple years ago, they tweaked the catch rule just a little bit. Are you happy with where we're going now? Is this something that could stand in the NFL? No, Nick's laughing.
He's accepting of it. Cece's done a good job of accepting this.
Right. There's been I love this game. And I think that when you make adjustments to make the game better for the people watching the game, it's not going to hurt the history of the game. It's not going to hurt how the game is played. No, it's only going to enhance fans. We're trying to get people to fall in love with football, not fall out of love with football. We shouldn't have 4 or 5 calls every Monday and the fans don't know what they're watching, all right? They spend their hard-earned money to watch this game. They should know the product. They should be able to sit there and be like, that's a catch. That's not a catch. All right, and so I think that will keep the NFL one of the most popular sports, acquiescing to the fan, and they've done a good job. Raj, you know.
Very nicely said. Big R, right? Hey, coming up, how do the Celtics keep winning without Kyrie Irving in the lineup? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA analyst Sarah Kustok. How you doing, Sarah?
Good to see you guys.
You're becoming a regular.
No.
Listen.
That just called back from yesterday.
Happen again, Sarah.
I'm seeing LeBron. I'm calling a Cavs game Sunday, so I'm going to get the background. But I've been practicing.
Ketta, Brian, y'all get her booked even more. I was getting ready to say, welcome a regular to our show, but now we just increased your contract.
All right, I have to just real quick tell the audience.
Little backstory.
Yesterday, we showed LeBron embracing Joe Thomas. I foolishly mentioned to the audience that when Cece was at a game in Miami, LeBron and Cece made eye contact. In Cleveland, pardon me.
Yes.
LeBron and Cece made eye contact, and that is what LeBron did to Cece, the little bow with the legend.
You don't even know what you just did, Sarah.
Sarah, you are one of my favorites, but never again. Never, ever again.
So
Take a break. All right, let's talk some Kyrie Irving.
Ma'am?
He's missed. Stop calling me ma'am. You might as well call me Jenna. He's missed the last 4 games with a sore left knee, and now will reportedly be seeking a second opinion. But that doesn't mean the Celtics are done competing. Last night, Boston snapped the Thunder 6-game win streak with a 100-99 win. Celtics have gone 2-2 in Kyrie's recent absence. They're still firmly in second place in the East. Sarah, how have the Celtics been able to compete without Kyrie and basically a whole host of other players that are in and out with injuries?
I think this was said when the trade happened, and he talked about what is Danny Ainge's most valuable asset. Brad Stevens.
Wow, well said.
He's the guy. He is the reason this team is at the point they're at. And this goes back to the beginning of the season. 2-2 since Kyrie's been out, but one of those losses, a double overtime loss to Washington that they could have won. They lost by 3 points, I think, to Houston. In a lot of these losses and in close games, and the wins, it's the system. It's the system they put in. It's the belief that Brad Stevens instills in them. And I think you see it if they are able to have a chance at the end of the game. It's the type of play calling. It's the out of timeouts, the way in which Brad Stevens is able to draw up sets, the execution of that. It starts at the defensive end for this team, how well they work together. But it doesn't matter what personnel you plug in. They understand where to be. They understand their roles. And it's similar to me. There's a lot of similarities now you're seeing with San Antonio, Greg Popovich, how he plugs in players. It doesn't matter who the personnel is. It's because of the system and how they run things and the understanding that starts during training camp. But I think that's where it all begins.
Listen, for me, you are preaching my gospel when it comes to Brad Stevens. I think aside from Greg Popovich, he is clearly the best coach in the NBA. And I think including Greg Popovich, when it comes to end-of-game, out-of-timeout situations, nobody puts their team in a better position to win. You then add to that, people talk about Danny Ainge a lot, but also I'm going to mention a name we've never said on the show, Mike Zarin, a member of that front office for a long time, who has an analytical background. Why does that matter? Think of the end of the game last night. They're down 2. This is something 75% of NBA teams simply don't understand. They still hold to this old crazy axiom of at home you play for overtime, on the road you play for the... No. You got to think about it like this when it comes to shoot a 3 to win or play for overtime. Unless you have a wide open dunk or layup, the percentages are so clear you should go for the win. Because if overtime's a coin flip, let's just say overtime's a 50-50 proposition, even if you're getting a 60% shot from 2, you then have 60% of 50%. That's a 30% chance to win. So as long as the three-pointer is better than a 30% shot, that's the play to go with. The Celtics, I know the math is nerdy. Trust me, it's right. And the Celtics do that better than everyone. If they go for 2 last night, Jason Tatum, it looked like, had a layup. He had a layup to force overtime. He kicks it to an average three-point shooter. That is the right play. So many teams don't make that play. I feel like that has been instilled from the front office down to Stevens, down to the players, and that's how I feel like they've gotten 6 wins this year they had no business getting.
There are also things don't talk about that are important. Their basketball development. People always talk about the head coach. People don't talk about the systems. How, when you have young players, because your 2 stars are out. So how are the Celtics doing it? They must be developing these young players. You talked about Tatum. His development as a 20-year-old player without playing with superstars. It's hard to play in the NBA. Physically, it's taxing. Mentally, it's taxing. And let alone, you're playing with guys you weren't expecting to be playing with. So the head coach is doing a tremendous job. Danny Ainge has done a good job, but their basketball developed, and they're developing of young players and plugging them in, have them play well in critical situations. I mentioned this on the show a couple months ago. I think they're a couple years away from competing for a title. They still got a lot of picks, all right? Gordon Hayward still hadn't played 4 quarters of basketball with the Celtics, but I'm concerned about Kyrie's knee. Yeah. These other guys are developing. There was rumors about Kyrie's knee when he left Cleveland. You know, did he need a procedure? He potentially threatened to maybe sit out and have his knee worked on. So I'm not surprised that they're having problems with his knee, but I'm really surprised with him out, with Smart out, that they would still be able to play a game like they did last night and be able to steal a game away from one of the hottest teams in the NBA.
Well, and I watched Shane Larkin was a guy who was playing overseas last year. I watched him in Brooklyn the previous year for the entire season, not even close to the type of player that we're seeing. You got a guy like Greg Monroe, who Brad Stevens is utilizing in a way that best suits
anybody in the league could have had
strength.
Greg Monroe.
Anyone could have had him. How they're utilizing him. Even Jaylen Brown didn't play, of course.
Right.
He's running, but look at the development of him throughout the course of this season. Terry Rozier.
Yes.
I mean,
Terry Rozier was a guy that was. People, I may have been one of them, poked fun at Danny Ainge for desperately. You can't include Terry Rozier in a trade. No. Terry Rozier's off limits. We're like, what are you talking about, Terry Rozier? Terry Rozier's been good. Like, he's been the player that only the Celtics thought he could become. And the one other thing that, in addition to the player development, and this is one of the reasons why I think people fairly did have some questions about the Celtics come the postseason, but why they're so dangerous in the regular season is they seem to have a playoff intensity on defense every single night. Now, why would that make you question about the postseason? Is typically most teams are able to kick it up a notch in the postseason. I feel like the Celtics are operating almost on max capacity on that every night. That is a testament to, I believe, the coaching and the testament, of course, the players deserve credit for executing it, but the culture you instill of, this is how we're going to have to win games, guys. We're going to have to win games by competing every possession and making it hard to score. It is a pain to play Boston. It's not fun to go play Boston. Like, you know, you're going to have to work. It's going to be physical. Marcus Smart's going to be breathing right in your face. Like, it's just not an enjoyable team to go up against.
And they've done it in different ways with play. At first, you got guys like Marcus Smart or guys that are versatile that can guard multiple positions. Now they're doing it with play. They can go big. They can go small. They can play different ways and play at a different pace.
Let's bring it back to Kyrie Irving in a second. How worried are you about him? Because what you're reading is, well, he could be back the next game, or he could have surgery next year, or Danny Ainge said, or he could have surgery the year after that, or maybe even the year after that. So it seems like they're not exactly sure what his health is and where he's going to be.
I think Kyrie's going to be a little bit like Dwayne Wade, a guy who struggles with his lower extremities. Now, Dwayne Wade, he was able to get more years in the league before he got injured like Kyrie. Kyrie's already been hurt a couple times. He's already had procedures done to his knee. When he has the type of game that he has, you worry about his lower extremities. Isaiah Thomas, a guest friend of the show, he tells us about small guys. Man, their lower extremities, their legs and stuff, when they start to bother them, like that cuts their. You don't see small guys 6 foot and 6'2" and under. You don't see them playing 15 years in the NBA. Not as premier players. There's a reason why, because they get worn out. And Kyrie, I think this is something that we'll continually have to watch.
Yeah, and his game is predicated on his quickness. So to your point, not having that explosive nature may affect him.
And the discussion with Kyrie is whether or not they need to remove the screws he had put in his knee when he broke his kneecap in the NBA Finals the first year they went to the Finals in Cleveland. Here's what I am confident saying. I do not have sources on this, but it's my intuition. What the Celtics will not do is make the mistake with Kyrie that I bet at least they feel or the player feels they made with Isaiah Thomas, which is have a guy play through an injury when you can't win a championship. Like, with all due respect to the Celtics, they cannot win a title this year, even if Kyrie plays. So what you can't do is damage his ability to be healthy going into next year, damage his ability to be the player he should be because you force him to.
And their opinion might be a little different if they had Hayward playing.
Oh, absolutely.
But to me, this is why he's getting a second opinion.
Correct.
Because they saw no structural damage initially, and they said arrest. So to me, that's why you continue to check on it.
All right, Sarah, stick around. Coming up, is it time to consider the Houston Rockets as the best team in the NBA? Next on First Things First. So what's the difference between press release and hype? Well, press release said the Blazers-Rockets game was going to be a great matchup. Blazers had won 13 in a row, Rockets 22 of 23. Hype said this game is going to be off the charts. Believe the hype. Houston got the win. James Harden got 42 points, including 2 step-back threes to close it out. Rockets now own a 4-game lead in the Western Conference. Sarah Kustok, is it time to consider the Houston Rockets as the favorites to win the NBA title?
No.
No.
Until you tell me that Golden State is missing one of their top 4 players in the postseason, then that may be a consideration. I still don't believe that Houston is the favorite, but I love Houston. I love the way they're playing. I believe strongly in how they're playing, given the fact that a lot of it is very transferable to the postseason, the pace that they're playing at. They've slowed things down. It's been much more of a possession game. What they've done on the defensive end has now been sustainable throughout the entire duration of the season, which was a big question for them. And you got 2 stars like Harden and CP3, what they can do in different points of attack offensively, how effective they've been in isolation. Their role players are doing their jobs. Clint Capella is great. I mean, the list goes on.
Another question for you, Sarah.
Yeah.
Who's the best team in the NBA? Forget the favorite. Right now.
The best team?
The best team.
I would probably say Houston.
Okay, because that's the same thing that I said.
CC has the exact same distinction. Golden State's the favorite, but Houston's the best team.
Yeah.
Yeah, because of their championships and because Nick mentioned that the historic portion of where Cleveland is headed. As far as Houston's headed, as far as 65 wins, there's only been 20 teams.
Only 20 teams have ever won at least 65 games. 15 of those 20 have won the title. So, and Houston, if they go 8-3 or better, is going to get to 65 wins.
Now, the only thing that's not in that stat with those 15 teams that won a title was There's another team that won more than 65 games that didn't win a title, and that's Golden State. And when they were up 3-1 on Cleveland, so they're part of that stat line, the teams that didn't win. That's the only thing that stops them from winning 3 in a row and be going for number 4. So, yes, this is the best team, but they are going against a team based on NBA history is one of the best teams in NBA history. That's what makes them the favorite in my eyes, compared to who's the best.
I too, though, look at, with everything else aside, how they're playing. Golden State going to the title the past 3 years, winning 2 of those. That first year, they were looking for their first title. The second year, they were going for 73 wins. The third year, Kevin Durant just came to the team. He was hungry to get his first title. This is the 4th year. Not to say they don't have as much motivation, but what's driving them other than just being the competitors we know that they are, wanting to get another title? To me, Houston is just locked in.
Well, right. So there is because we know the numbers this year say Houston's been the best team. They have the best record. They're 39-2 when their big 3 plays, Harden, Paul, and Clint Capella. They're 41-4 when it's just Harden and Paul. Like, forget the Clint Capella portion of it. We know that they have, I think it ticked down just a bit yesterday, so one of the 3 best offenses in the history of the league, as opposed to the best offense in the history of the league. But what they don't have is the experience. The experience, though, kind of cuts both ways, because that also means they are not going to be heading into their 4th straight 100-game season. They are not dealing with the nagging injuries that Golden State is dealing with up and down the roster. And the injuries thing, and we talk every year, man, injuries play a part. Think about how many championship or fringe championship contenders, just the best 8 teams in the league. The Cavs, they've been dealing with injuries all year, including right now, Rodney Hood's out. The Oklahoma City Thunder, their best defensive player, done for the year in Roberson. The Spurs, the reason they're not in this discussion is their best player's been out. The Timberwolves, Jimmy Butler had knee surgery. The Celtics, Kyrie, and don't forget Gordon Hayward, and of course Golden State. That's everybody in the league except for really Toronto and Houston. By the way, who have the 2 best records in basketball? Toronto and Houston. Like, that does matter. And that is, and I'm not saying you guys are discounting that. So the injury factor and the lack of wear and tear over the last few seasons, I think applies. And I also just look at the Rockets and I say, man, they've played 29 games against the next best 8 teams in their conference. And they're 24 games. They're 21-3. Like, they've been winning on the road, they've been winning at home, they've been beating the good teams, beating the bad teams. You can't poke, the only hole I can poke in Houston's roster is they don't have 4 Hall of Famers. Golden State's got 4 Hall of Famers in the prime of their career.
But I think at the end of the day, until the Warriors don't do it, the Warriors are still favored to do it, right? Even though they've got injuries and they're riddled with them right now, they've got you call it the pedigree the last couple of years. They've done it this entire season. They've been unstoppable. They've walked. It's almost been a cakewalk for them this whole season. Right. Rest them up, get those guys back until they don't do it anymore.
But the reason why you can make Houston the favorite is not only how they've played, but the style for which they've played. If you watch them play last night, one of my guys, you said I hate to say his name, Luke Bedamut.
Luke Rashard Mbamute.
Yeah, that dude, number 12.
LRMM.
Yeah. But their ability, and I saw last night, Joe Johnson got 15 minutes. My guy Ryan Anderson is back. Like, their bench is so deep. So I believe right now, because Golden State's best lineup is when they play small ball. I believe Houston is better at small ball, and I believe they're better at closing out games that they figured it now out with Harden and Chris Paul. That's the reason why I'm so excited about Houston. They've changed the way they do things, and you mentioned the possessions are starting to slow down. A lot like playoff basketball, so it's not like they're going to get to the playoffs and the style's going to change. They're going to have like a 20, 25-game little experimental period where they have dominated the NBA, playing the style that is the playoffs.
And it's that type of depth that we often point to as a weakness in Golden State. But D'Antoni, I need some scoring. Joe Johnson, come on in. I need some toughness. Give me Gerald Green. I need a shooter in Ryan Anderson. Oh, he's not playing defense. You can continue to pull
the
different
coach
guys.
Talked about, man, I got to find minutes for Joe Johnson. I got to find some minutes for Ryan. Man, there is no coach in the league that has that type of luxury right now as far as the quality players, the quality shooters that they can put on the court.
To speak to that point, Nene getting hurt in a playoff run, I think it was last year, maybe last year, that was a big loss for them. Yeah. Nene was, according to the box score, DNP coach's decision last night. Like when it comes to finding minutes. And there's one other point that Houston has going for them when it comes to the matchup against Golden State. And there's a psychological component that I think matters. Golden State in this run has been challenged in 2 series. The one against the Thunder that they almost lost, and the one against the Cavs they did lose. What those 2 teams had was their best guys truly believed and would have passed a polygraph saying it, we're better than your best guys. LeBron believed he's better than Steph, or believed he's better than Clay, if you want to call it Draymond. And you know Kyrie said, I'm better than Steph. Same with Russ, thought he was better than Steph, and KD thought he was better than everybody else they got. When you've got Houston now, Harden can credibly say, I am better than you, Kevin Durant. And I don't believe this to be true, but I know Chris Paul believes he's been better than Steph Curry every day of his life. He's not, and I loved CP3. He's not better than Steph. But Golden State, Houston does not have the, oh my gosh, what do I do here component with these guys, because they do believe we got the 2 best players.
So, but they have the reputation of, oh my God, what do we do here in the postseason? And that's going to point to Mike D'Antoni to get them ready, so that experience is not even a word that comes up when the media is surrounded.
But I think that's part of what they've shown. And I also think offensively, the way in which when you're in a playoff series, you're focused on one team, you're scouting one team, you're playing every couple days. You know this team inside and out. The best part of their offense is their ability to improvise. And that's what Harden does so well. That's what CP3 does so well. They're not calling plays. They're not calling sets. It's all about them making reads and making decisions. And it's a whole lot different having Chris Paul there as compared to what we saw last year.
I believe where Harden is playing now and what he's doing, and we've seen this with the MVP, and when they get to the playoffs, I believe Harden's going to get those calls. I believe he's going to be shooting double-digit in free throws. Nick, who leads the NBA in scoring in the 4th quarter?
Right now, it's LeBron in the 4th
quarter.
And
who's next?
I think it's James Harden.
James Harden and his free throw shoot. James Harden's also first in the NBA in first quarter scoring. So you talking about a guy getting the team off and a guy closing them out. Like, that's who James Harden's been. So, favorite, best team right now, the Houston Rockets are playing the type of basketball that if you wouldn't be surprised if they hoisted the trophy at the end of the season.
Just quickly, the point CC made about Harden winning the MVP and how that applies to him getting calls in the playoffs, that if you're right on that, that is a huge differential from what Harden's dealt with the last few years. One of the reasons Houston has struggled in the playoffs is Harden leads the league in free throw shooting every year, and then the playoffs, the refs swallow their whistle a little bit. If he gets a regular season whistle in the playoffs, that ups his production 10-15%.
All right, Sarah, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Everything shy of the way you said.
Get her booked up, man.
No.
Hey, Brian, let's talk to some people. Whit, LA.
We're back after this. All right, new topic here to the NBA draft. Oklahoma's Trae Young and Texas's Mo Bamba both declared yesterday. Both had solid freshman seasons. Both are probably lottery picks, but not in the top 5. And both couldn't get their teams out of the first weekend of the tournament. Now, a few weeks ago, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said he's considering changes to the one-and-done rule. Nick, did they make a mistake declaring for the draft, these 2 guys?
This is a tough one because I don't think it's ever a mistake for a guy who's going to be a top 10 pick to declare for the draft. Mo Bamba, without question, is going to be a top, I would say, 7 pick. And Trae Young, I would imagine, when it all shakes out, is going at worst 11th or 12th and probably closer to 8th or 9th. So in that regard, when it comes to creating immediately a form of generational wealth for your family, immediately starting to become a professional where you do not have to focus on classes, you do not have to focus on anything but basketball, for all those reasons, I get it. But I look at both these guys and say they are going to struggle mightily next year in the NBA. Mo Bamba I think he will translate somewhat immediately, but he's also 6'11", 220.
Yes.
And he is going to get bullied. And Trae Young, it is hard to find a player in this league he can guard. It is hard to find a team in this league that is going to be okay with his shot selection as we saw at Oklahoma. So I think they are going to have a bit of a culture shock, if you will, going to the NBA. And when the NBA is talking about changes, man, I remember reading about, because I wasn't alive when it happened, Larry Bird being drafted by the Celtics 6th overall, and then playing another year at Indiana State. Like, they drafted him, held his rights, but he spent another year in college. I would love if that were available to Trae Young. Listen, you can take him at 8th overall, 9th overall, but he's going back to Oklahoma for another year, competing against guys more his speed, learning the game more, so he is more developed. Because we've seen how much better was Ben Simmons with a year of his body maturing, of aging. Now, that wasn't intentional. He was injured, but a lot of I just think Trae Young particularly really needs that. Mo Bamba also to really round out his game and to get some weight on him.
Yeah, you mentioned Ben Simmons. Go ahead, Jenna.
No, well, I was going to say, do you have to factor in, is this the highest their stock is ever going to be? Because if you think it is, then maybe you don't really have an option.
See, I doubt that it's the highest their stock's going to be, because if they stayed in college, next year they'd be competing against high school players. So when you evaluate the players next year, how would they go down? Unless you just think there's a great crop in 2020 coming into college basketball. So for me, they're two of the youngest already. So you're comparing them against a class of guys who are younger and have less experience than me. So I don't fall for that theory. This is the most, this right now, they're taking advantage of their popularity, because if their skill level goes up, both of them would have gained some strength. So only their projection would go up as NBA players.
But you saw the difference between the first half of Trae Young's season and the second, when guys figured out how to guard him. Next year, coming into the season, they're going to figure his game out.
I would be concerned that, listen, Trae led Division I in points and assists. I do think that would be hard to duplicate next year. I do wonder.
It's not the productivity, it's the skill and the strength. You don't have to duplicate the numbers, but you have to get better as a basketball player. Be a better defender. Put some physical size to his game. Understand the game, that his shot selection could be better. Those things right there would improve his projection in the NBA.
Let me ask you a question. I understand you left Ohio State in very different circumstances. If it were, do you think it would have been better for you to play 4 years in college?
Absolutely.
No, because again, the rules were different then. There was a whole circumstance with that.
This is what I believe, that when you only have a window of, say, 3 to 7 years, and you are a young person, you're in your 20s. I ask my son this all the time. Would you rather be playing professional sports when you're 22, 23, 24, 25, or would you rather be playing professional sports when you're 20, 21, 22, 23? Like, everyone's not Kobe. Everyone is not Tracy McGrady. Everyone's not LeBron. So these other guys, when they get to being in the league 6 and 7 years, they haven't developed. So them leaving school, I just believe a lot of the kids, they make more mistakes going into the NBA than we see guys who say, you know something, I'm going to stay in college. Donovan Mitchell, we talked about Ben Simmons, him getting the year because of injury. Donovan Mitchell, him staying a couple years in college. Look at his development to the NBA. His body is far more mature. He seemed to make that transition. I just believe allowing kids into the NBA it does not help them. All right? It does not help their development. The guys in the NBA are grown men. Trae and them, Mubamba, they're just kids. They just kids. And we saw guys last year. Lonzo.
Yeah.
Dominate college basketball. Struggled in the NBA, and he's got a lot better body than these guys. De'Aaron Fox, unbelievable athlete with Kentucky. Malik Monk, we saw him go for 40 last year in college. So we saw him struggle in the transition. So I just believe, don't rush people into pro sports. I would just much rather have them at an older age where they're more mature and the lifestyle is easier to adapt.
All right, coming up, did Oklahoma City's loss last night cost them more than just a game? Next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.